For more than 100 days, Nicaragua has been facing a political crisis that's left more than 400 people dead and thousands more injured. Forces loyal to President Daniel Ortega have been cracking down on anti-government demonstrations. He's now accused of widespread human rights abuses. Vice President Pence condemned Ortega's regime last week. He accused the Nicaraguan leader of religious oppression.
The list of religious freedom violators is long. Their crimes and oppressions span the width of our world. Here in our hemisphere, in Nicaragua, the government of Daniel Ortega is virtually waging war on the Catholic Church. Last week, the Ortega government laid siege to his church after more than 200 students sought shelter there, and 2 students lost their lives. They joined the more than 350 courageous Nicaraguans who have died in the cause of freedom this year alone. Let me say to you, Father, our prayers are with you, and the people of America stand with you for freedom of religion and freedom in Nicaragua.
Well, in an effort to condemn Ortega's government, the United States has said that it will revoke or restrict the visas of Nicaraguan officials connected to deadly attacks on protesters. Our Manuel Bojorquez has just come back from Nicaragua, and he joins me now on set. Manny, so great to have you back and glad to know you're safe. Hundreds of people have been killed in this process. The people that you spoke to on the streets, do they feel that it was worth it?
They do, and for many reasons. One, it's because they now have the attention that many of them crave to say, let's look at this situation here in Nicaragua and how can we solve it? How can we reach a peaceful resolution to remove this president from office? Of course, he does have supporters there as well. There have been marches in favor of the Ortega presidency and his government. So people really hoping that the international community can do more to step in and bring both sides together. That remains to be seen, though, whether it will happen. But many people say this is our future. We feel that if we do not speak up, no one else will.
Do they feel that the international community is listening, that the journalists are there to cover their story?
Some of them do, and some of them want more, clearly. Every time that we ask somebody, what is it going to take for a peaceful resolution to this, or at least a resolution to it, they say international pressure. Not only the sanctions and trying to tighten some of the money around the Ortegas, but also people to pay attention and to say we have to do something about this. Again, on the other side of that, you have the president saying that he sees this as an attempted coup and one that was backed by the United States. So clearly, when it comes to the international questions around this, there are both sides, but the opposition there very much wants to see people get involved and try to do more here.
You were actually supposed to interview President Manuel Ortega today. They canceled. What happened? Do we know why?
We do not know. This is an interview that was set up, and we had for days been planning on it. This morning, we learned that it would not be happening. It was something that was supposed to happen via satellite. We were told that something came up in his schedule. So we don't know. We can't really speculate about why it did not happen. Clearly, we had a lot of questions about what was going on and about some of the things that organizations around the world have condemned as human rights abuses. I wanted to hear his side of it clearly, but that's not happening. He has said previously, though, that he does not feel that these paramilitary forces that have been accused of killing protesters are working on the direction or under the direction of his government. Of course, the question there is, what is the government doing to stop those from happening out in the streets? And that's some of the things we were hoping to nail down. Not going to happen, at least today.
Okay. Hopefully, maybe it will still happen. Manny, I want to ask you, though, he's been accused of trying to set up a dynasty. Can you explain to us the power structure?
Sure. This is a situation now where you have a president who has served several terms after the revolution, and then he lost and then came back. And now his wife is the vice president. Many critics say that that was an attempt to cement the Ortega dynasty, as they call it, as critics call it, and to make sure that there is always going to be an Ortega in power, and many family members are in key positions. This is something that the government there says is not a dynasty. They say that they were rightfully elected by the people and that people should wait until 2021 when the next scheduled elections are supposed to happen and not try to move those forward to possibly next year, as many of the protesters are trying to get.
But Manny, my understanding is 70% of Nicaraguans want him out. So why won't he resign?
Well, he would tell you that that poll is probably coming from someone who's against him, who is biased, probably financed by someone in the U.S. or an international organization that's trying to remove a leftist government in that part of the world. He says he will not leave because he was rightfully elected by the people of Nicaragua, and there are many people there who also very much believe that and say, wait until 2021, wait until the elections. But again, there are a lot of people on the other side, these protesters, who say, we're dying under this regime, what they call a regime, and they would like the change to happen much before then.
Do people buy this, that this is what he's spinning it in the sense that this is some sort of an outside international force trying to launch him out of there?
Yeah, a lot of people do believe that. A lot of people on the Sandinista side of this believe very much that this is an attempted coup, that the students, because this did start out in the universities, this movement, that many of them they feel were put up to it by outside forces, outside governments. But the students that I spoke with will tell you that no, this was an organic movement that really did start there, that had been really simmering for a long time, that it wasn't just the cutbacks on state welfare that really were the catalyst, that there were other things at play that really led to this movement happening. So, of course, they say no. This is not something that was sponsored by anybody else. This is something homegrown. A lot of them are in hiding right now because even though you don't have the street fighting that you did a few weeks ago, they say that they are still being targeted and that they are being sought after to be jailed on trumped-up charges. Again, that's their version. The government, as you know, has called many of them terrorists and said that they've killed police officers, that they are the ones inciting violence. But if you look at what many of the organizations are saying on an international level, clearly the injuries and the deaths are much, much heavier on the opposition side.
You know, speaking of injuries and deaths, you found a fascinating report on the weekend edition of the Evening News on Saturday, looking at the doctors and the nurses and the medical professionals who are actually scared to treat these wounded protesters. Can you give us a sense of why that is and why it's such a chilling effect on the medical community?
Here's the way it works. So you have public hospitals that in many ways are financed clearly by the government, and then you have private hospitals. So many of the public hospitals, the people who were injured felt like they couldn't go there because they knew somebody would be waiting for them, or that the doctors wouldn't treat them because there was word on the streets that the doctors were told you can't treat these people because then you'll be singled out. And we have heard reports coming from Nicaragua of people in the medical community being fired for doing just that. So when many people say you aren't seeing these violent protests or confrontations on the streets anymore, they feel that this conflict has moved into other arenas, into people's homes, into people's professions, and that if you're seen to be someone who is anti-government, there will be repercussions. Again, the government says that's not happening, but it's what many people on the ground are telling us is happening.
Absolutely incredible, Manu. So great to have you on set to talk about your reporting. Thank you very much.